light version.
We're on YouTube now.
Oh, okay.
Keep it at least NC-17 rated.
Correct. And we'll start in 3. There she is. Hello, Liz. Long time no see.
Hi, it's great to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
Great. Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out where that vacuum cleaner is coming from.
It's either
That's-
some.
It's Andrew's air conditioner.
There's my-
No, Andrew was muted. It was still going
Oh, he's
on.
muted.
Oh,
He's still-
oh, wow.
Yeah, and it doesn't sound like an air conditioner either.
Well, neither does my air conditioner. Sometimes I wonder if something's living inside of it.
I once had a hard drive go on my workstation while I was meeting with a client, and it literally sounded like a squirrel was trying to get out of my computer. It was the scariest sound I've ever heard emanating from a computer.
Well, it's important to note that squirrels, or actually mice in this case, can get into computers.
Yeah, I know.
And
I know.
do you remember in the way back when, this is like the 80s, the IBM one, the original IBM? Well, my friend Ken Weiss had one of those maybe like late 80s. It was on his table and it was next to his bird cage with his parrot. And then one day it lights on fire. And so he puts it out, and it turns out that mice had been taking seeds from the bird cage into the computer, and it was packed solid. It wasn't like a few little bit. It was packed solid, except of course for the mouse tunnel.
Right.
So needless
Well,
to say, he doesn't do that anymore.
We have a transformer behind the house that a squirrel decided one winter that it wanted to live inside, and it blew out the whole neighborhood. They're notorious for doing that to SEPTA too, blowing out transformers. Well, I see it's 7:30, so we will get started. And I want to welcome everybody. Welcome to what may be our very last full virtual meeting, because we will in July we will meet in person at Fort Washington National Park, and in August we will probably dispense with the meeting because we would be conflicting with Alcon. And then we'll see where we are in September. We may find ourselves back at Radnor with a quasi-virtual and real life meeting. We'll see how that goes. So welcome, everyone. I'm about to put into the chat a link from Miral. It's a survey that they want amateur astronomers to complete about constellations of satellites. I just put it in the chat. I'm sure none of you, while observing or photographing the sky, have encountered anything like these constellations of satellites much. What was it, last week that we had airplanes, satellites? Dick Steinberg posted a couple pictures. I know others have. So I think we should, as many of us who can weigh in about what those things are doing to our sky gazing, that would be good. So I put that link in the chat. Grab that, answer that survey so that we have plenty of information. Brian cannot make it tonight. We do have, however, 5 new members, none of whom I see but hopefully some will come online. The new members are Jeff Miller, Jeffrey Ferguson, Winston Gibson, Arthur Huppert, and Brian Wojciechowski. I'm glad he's not on to correct how I pronounced his last name. Arthur Huppert, Arthur actually lives around the corner from me, and on June 10th, at the partial eclipse, I was sitting there with my eclipse glasses on, and he sort of snuck up behind me where I was observing, and then we started chatting. And he didn't know there were local astronomy clubs. And I said, oh, yeah, I told him all about DVAA, and he joined. So sorry he's not on the meeting, but glad to see we've got 5 new members. And with that, I'm going to pass it right on to Lewis for the Treasurer's Report.
Sure. We're in healthy perspective, and I am very pleased to say we're at 183 members, which I believe is a record since about the 90s, right? It's certainly a record since I've been in the club in 2006. And so good on us. And
Yeah, for sure.
Keep the good work coming. As always, if you have any questions about things, I'm going to somewhere around October, I'll start bugging you to re-up, but right now we're all golden, and keeps those cards and letters coming. And very importantly, if anyone has questions with the website, I'm your guy, but even better, there's a support button on the website that gets you to a real live human. If you have any questions what to do, and for all the people who are contributing to the website, wow, it just gets better and better every day.
Great, thank you. Janet, I know you had an outreach report.
Yes, it's not so much on outreach. We have one event tomorrow, but that's at Radnor, the backyard camping. That's all set. We're staffed for that. We don't have any outreach events in July, but I do want to talk about our next regular monthly meeting, which is going to be irregular because it will be in person and in Fort Washington State Park, as Harold mentioned. The theme of this is a bit about getting deeper into astronomy. So we won't have a speaker. We'll have a series of exhibits by the DVAA experts on interesting topics. We're going to have one on telescopes, one on solar observing, one on the Astronomical League and the NASA Night Sky Network, astrophotography, light pollution, astronomy apps. So there are lots of topics. You can circulate among the exhibits and go to whatever interests you. And as I said, the theme is getting a little deeper. So finding out about something that you might not know about. And we have, you were talking about the number of members, 63 of those members, I looked, joined since our last in-person meeting. So we've never met these 63 people, and they've not met each other, and they've not met the regular member or the older members. So I think that the in-person meeting will be a really great opportunity for everyone to see each other and for the new members to learn a little more about what DVAA is all about. Now, we are going to have refreshments since we can do it outside. We are also, the astronomy fair with all the exhibits will be between 6:30 and 8:30. And then from 8:30 to 10:30, we'll actually have observing. Now, it's not going to be a dark sky night. We have a lot of moon, and it's not that dark at the park. But we will have the ability for people to set up telescopes, and especially people who would like some help with their telescopes. So bring your telescope, set it up, and there will be someone there to help you figure out whatever it is that's puzzling you. And lastly, before the meeting, the women of DVAA are going to have a pre-meeting pizza. So pizza's free. Come and join us if you'd like to meet some of the women of the club. If you're female and you'd like to meet some of the women in the club. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Janet. And I think you said you would like to get a couple of members to bring. You need more telescopes for that meeting.
No, we don't need more well, I think it's fine just if we set up a telescope or two, but what I'm thinking is that people might set up telescopes if they need help. I mean, anybody's welcome to bring a telescope, that's clear. It's just not going to be a great dark sky night.
Right. Right. All right. Great. If you need anybody else, just post it, send us an email, and we'll try and get more bodies to help you out.
Okay.
Excellent. Looking forward to that meeting in person.
Yes,
That
I think a lot of us are.
for sure. Andrew, you have an observing report.
I do. Let me share my screen here. All right. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Great. So I turned off my air conditioning, but just as I did that, my dog decided to go to town on a bone. So if you hear that, I apologize. This will be fixed by a great in-person meeting next time. I'll get to see if you guys are still out there and not just recordings. So that'll be fun. For all you new people out there, my name's Andrew. I'm the observing chair for the DVAA, and this is the observing report for June 2021. And this time I wanted to talk about the Astronomical League, and it's timely that we're mentioning the August meeting and Alcon. So for those of you who don't know what Alcon is, I'll give a little talk about it. But I've mentioned a lot about like the observing programs and things before. And I didn't really want to go too much into them, although I'll list a few at the end. But I just wanted to say, like, what is the Astronomical League? You know, they're kind of the parent organization of all amateur astronomer clubs. And I just wanted to go over like what they are, the benefits of it, and some of the cool like awards and things that you can get from being a member. So first off, what is the AL, or Astronomical League? So it's an organization consisting of over 240 local clubs all across the United States. So it's kind of a parent organization to those clubs. Of course, you don't need to be part of the Astronomical League if you do have an amateur astronomy club, but there are benefits to it if you do wish to be a member. So the goal of the AL is to encourage interest in astronomy throughout America. And it's really to promote the science of astronomy. And a lot of the observing programs and awards and all are science focused. Of course, it's really nice to look at through the telescopes and things, but a lot of them try and teach you more about what you're looking at, which I think is fantastic. So I got this mission bullets from their website. It's fostering astronomical education, providing incentives for astronomical observation and research, and assisting communication among amateur astronomical societies. And I think that they missed one. Another one is just, you have strength in numbers, right? So Harold sent out that survey about satellites. There's, of course, light pollution, which is a huge issue. And the AL is a great way to, bring all of the clubs together and say, hey, the amateur astronomical community has these kinds of issues. And they just have a bigger voice than all of the individual clubs would have individually. So I think that they missed that, but that's also a great part of being a member of the AL. But for the individual members, there's a lot of benefits. This isn't inclusive, but you get a nice quarterly reflector magazine, which is kind of like a Sky and Telescope, but completely voluntary and ran by the AL. You get access to awards and observing certificates, which I think is the biggest benefit. I didn't realize you do get vendor discounts. So you can go to the AL website and look at a list of vendors, and there's some pretty big names, such as Explore Scientific, which sponsors the AL a lot. And when you buy a product from them, tell them that you're a member of the AL, then you usually get like 5 or 10% off or so. So it's pretty nice. And then you also get access to a great yearly convention, which I'll mention later too. I'll mention that right now, actually. So I mentioned the Reflector. It's a quarterly magazine from the Astronomical League in March, June, September, and December. And it showcases amateur activities across the country. So it's from members of the AL, both like at the AL level, but then also in the individual clubs level and stuff. And this just showcases, maybe discoveries that amateurs have made, new supernovas and whatnot, new observing lists being created, and even just editorials on like what there is to see and stuff. What is the latest happening in astronomy? And there are a few professionals hosted in the Reflector, but by and large, it's all amateur driven. So it's a great article. And then if you want to meet some of the people in the Reflector and part of the organization, they have an annual convention. And I don't know who's been to it. I've been to one. It's really, really fun. I wish that I could go to a few more. But it's a 3-day convention. And it's really revolves around a lot of presentations, like a lot of sit-down talks by amateurs and professionals. Some are more geared to amateurs and professionals, where a lot of them are just geared to general public. Professionals will talk about their latest research. There'll be outreach programs, and when I went, there were definitely quite a lot of like local families and stuff going. So it's really, really fun. And then of course, maybe you don't want to see a talk. It doesn't really pique your fancy. So then you can go to a vendor exhibit. Tons of vendors. When I went, there's Celestron, Orion, Meade, Explore Scientific, you name it, a bunch of small camera companies even there. It was really, really fun to talk to the people themselves. Sometimes even the CEOs, like the head honchos, will go there and you can talk to them and just geek out really over astronomy stuff. It's pretty fun. It often includes tours of nearby astronomical facilities and a star party. So the one that I went was in Tucson. So there was a tour of Kitt Peak one day, and then we did have a star party then. Fortunately, it was a full moon, which they usually avoid, which is a little strange. But I know that one was like in Zion and Bryce and all, which was pretty fun. So now, unfortunately, this year, of course, it's going virtual, Alcon 21. That is August 19th through 21st. And you can go to that website, alconvirtual.org, to register. I did a double check. I couldn't really find a price to register. So don't quote me on any of that. But, go to that website, look at the speakers, and there's a really, really great lineup. And the good thing about being virtual is, you can come and go as you please and just listen to what you want and then go about your day. So would highly recommend checking that out. So I mentioned the AL Awards, which is another great benefit of being an AL member. Not really because you might get the award or so, of course that is always an option, but also just being aware of, who are the people out there making an impact. And a lot of these awards, they'll be in the Reflector. You can read all about them and everything. And it's just a great way to learn new things and stuff. So I'll just briefly go through them. We have the Astronomical League Award, the big one, presented to a person, amateur professional, making a national or international impact in astronomy. The National Young Astronomers Award and the Jack Horkheimer Awards are both geared to younger members of the AL for both research and also significant outreach performance for the Astronomical League. And then we have some really fun ones. The Astronomic Sketching Award. So if you go to the AL website, you can see the winner, a great detailed sketch of some of the craters on the moon. I'm always envious of the people getting the Sketching Award and the Sketching Observers Clubs. I really wish I could do that. But then, we have sketching, and then we also have 2 imaging awards too. So we have the Williamina Fleming Award, which is specifically geared to female imagers. And then we have the Explore Scientific Awards, which is geared to anybody, and it has a few different categories. So, we have the planetary imaging, dark sky, and whatnot. So all of these awards, of course, come with accolades and some nice cash prizes too. So if you're interested, you can go to the AL website and take a look at them. So the observing programs, definitely what I consider the biggest benefit of being in the AL. And unlike the awards, you know, there's no real reward, like monetary or anything, for completing an observing program, but they're so nice. There's just that first bullet, just give you a direction and like a personal goal for your observing. Because, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there, and it can get really overwhelming. And, you know, well, I'm a beginner and I have this telescope, or, you know, I want to take it up a notch and see these kinds of things. And the AL programs are just so great for that. They're really helpful. They'll teach you a lot. I couldn't say enough good things about them. So for those of you who don't know what they are, they usually just include like a list of objects that you go observe using various requirements for equipment and skill levels and things. They cover a really wide variety of objects and skill levels, like I said, and I'll mention a few later. So as you go through these lists, you'll create a log and you'll document your observations. So things like, you know, the scene, the transparency, a little description of what you're seeing. Sometimes they have a sketch, although, you know, not everyone's an artist, right? And to be honest, you're sketching stars, which are dots and little fuzzy things. So you'll be fine. Don't worry about the sketching. And then once you complete the list and you complete the requirements, you can submit your logs to the program coordinator, usually by mail. And then if everything's satisfactory, you'll get a nice pin or certificate to like hang on your fridge or something. It's really fun. And also, you can also give them to your local friendly observing chair, and they'll take care of it for you. So, and then they can award it to you, which is the best part of the job, in my opinion. So there's at the bottom total 83 programs. I'm not going to list them all. I just chose 3 difficulty level that I wanted to point out as like really great ones if you wanted to get your feet wet. So for the novice, we have the lunar observing, a list of features on the moon that you can go through. You know, a lot of times we don't really observe the moon. We observe during new moon. So that's a really nice one that I hope to do soon. The Sky Puppy, which is geared to younger observers again. It's just a list of things to get them familiar with the night sky, like constellations, the moon, the sun, the planets, and all. It's pretty great. And then Tune a View, which is really fun. It's just a list of 100 objects that can be seen in the same field of view. And this is a novice one because you don't really need that high power scope or anything. A lot of them can be done in binoculars even. So it's pretty approachable. For intermediate, we have, you know, the classics really, the double stars, 100 double stars, you know, either globular clusters, open clusters, planetary nebula. Each are individual programs geared to one specific kind of object. And when you sign up for these, you'll get a book. And at a small price, but it's really worth it because the book goes through all the characteristics of things, the classification of items, how each one's formed and everything, how it's linked to star formation and all. They're really great too. And then we have the Messier program, which I feel like, you know, you're not a real observer until you do Messier. That's not true, but it is kind of a rite of passage, right? So you will observe all 70 or 110 objects recorded by Messier when he was looking for comets, things that weren't comets. So it's really a lot of fun. And then for the advanced ones, there's a few of them. The Flat Galaxy program, looking at a bunch of edge-on galaxies, bright and dark nebula, so emission nebula or dark nebulas. And then if Messier didn't get you tired, you can go through the Herschel 400 or the Herschel 2, which is another 400 dark sky objects. So I encourage you to go to the AL website and look at all of them. I'm sure if you don't think any of these look interesting, I'm sure there's one of the 83 that that you'll want to do. So, and then I just wanted to give a little snippet of a few of the pins here. The variable binoculars. I didn't mention the binoculars, but that's not because I had limited space. Binocular programs are really, really great, really approachable. The Skechers one, again, I envy that one. I wish I could do that. We have the double star, sun spotters, which is fun, Herschel 400 and the globular cluster over there going clockwise. So again, I really like it. And I think that's all I had. But yeah, the AL is a great organization. We don't always think of it, but if you are a member of the DVAA, you are a member of the Astronomical League, and there are more benefits to you that you might not know about. So definitely go check them out. And that's all I got.
Hey, Andrew, can I add one more thing? I
Yeah.
checked out, apparently registration is open right now. It's free. There's going to be, $3,000 in door prizes. There's going to be a keynote by Jocelyn Bell Burnell. There's going to be lots of people like David Levy there. So alconvirtual.org.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. It really is. If you talk to anybody who's went to one, they'll always say they had a great experience. So it's a lot of fun.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Andrew.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So our guest speaker tonight, Jeremy will do the formal intro to, but I have to tell you that Liz Landau is my second cousin. And my first acquaintance with her was at something that my grandparents held. They held what we call the Mega Seder, the second night of Passover in the Warwick Ballroom, with a few of their closest friends and all their relatives. And I did used to bump into Liz's dad on Walnut Street when I used to practice law downtown. I would see my cousin Elias from time to time, but it's been a long time and I don't practice downtown anymore. But since then, Liz has gone on to a lot greater things and has actually hung out more with my son, who has taken a couple trips to California. And actually, we probably have Liz to thank for our earlier guests, Laura Kerber and Janie Radeball, because Liz, I think, introduced Justin to both of those young ladies. So she also now has this fabulous podcast, if you're a podcast listener like I am, called Pod Paper Scissors, which I encourage you to listen to. It's a fascinating take on game theory and probability and statistics. And Liz, I'm way behind, but I just got to your episode on flirting, and I cannot wait.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
So let me give the floor to Jeremy to give you a more formal introduction, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say tonight.
All right, thanks. When you say formal introduction, I feel like I should be wearing a tie or something, but I think you'd throw me out of the organization if I showed up dressed like that. All right, so it's my pleasure this evening to introduce our speaker, Elizabeth Landau, or Liz Landau. So first, I'll just reiterate a little bit about our upcoming programs. So as Jan mentioned, in July, we'll have that in-person meeting at Fort Washington Park. So really looking forward to that. As far as August goes, the Alcon meeting will be held virtually August 19 through 21. And that actually overlaps with the date that we had picked for our meeting. And I figured there's no point in us competing against Alcon, since I'm sure they'll have some really great speakers there, as well as door prizes and everything else. You know, we looked at the calendar, pretty much everything else either overlaps with the Dark Sky weekend or gets a little too close to Labor Day. And I know it's hard to corral people towards the end of August, you know, the closing days of summer. So we figured, why compete? So we're recommending everyone to sign up for Alcon. As Lou said, it's free and it will be held virtually, so you can attend right from your living room. So before I get into the introduction, just a reminder that if you are not the invited speaker, please mute your microphone for the presentation, just to keep the noise level down. All right. So Liz, I was actually surprised that I grew up in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, which I guess is how you're related to Harold. So Liz actually has ties to this area, even though she's now working for NASA. So she did her BA in anthropology at Princeton University and got her master's in journalism at Columbia. So she's done a number of different things. She has been a writer for CNN, as well as New Scientist, Scientific American, and the Wall Street Journal, among a number of other publications. And as Harold said, she's also been very active in podcasting and using social media for science communication. I was also interested to read that Liz has been involved in improv comedy and doing some musical performances as well. So she's clearly very well-rounded. So since 2014, she has been working for NASA as a media relations specialist. So she led the media strategy for a couple of missions you may have heard of, including Dawn, Voyager, Spitzer, New Star, WISE, Planck, and Herschel. And she also led the NASA effort to share the discovery of the exoplanet system, TRAPPIST-1. In January 2018, she was appointed as senior storyteller for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So that's a really interesting title. So I'd like to hear a little more about what that means. So tonight, Liz is going to present Life Beyond Earth, where, how, and why. So please join me in welcoming Liz.
Thank you so much for that generous introduction. I hope I can live up to it. Really a pleasure to be here with you all tonight. I love astronomy, obviously. It's actually really interesting to hear about this Alcon, which I had not heard about before. Maybe I'll check that out. And I definitely, while I do a lot of more formal astronomy communication through NASA, I also love looking up at the stars. I actually saw the 2017 eclipse with Justin Goldner, my dear friend and cousin. That was probably the astronomical highlight of my life, was the 2017 eclipse. So let me pull up my presentation, make sure this is gonna share. Okay, I go to slideshow, start, and then I'm going to share the screen. Okay, can you all see that?
Yes, you can.
Okay, excellent. Well, thanks again for having me here. So tonight I'm going to talk about the search for life beyond Earth. And as you know, I'm not a scientist, but I'm a science communicator. And so I have the extreme pleasure of working with a lot of scientists who do actual research in this field. This field is actually called astrobiology, which is both the search for life beyond our planet, as well as the search for life in extreme environments on Earth that might resemble planets beyond Earth. And so if I can advance my slide deck. Okay, so you all see that? Okay, so tonight I'm going to go through this agenda. What even is my job? We're going to talk a little bit about life beyond Earth. We're going to talk about how we might find it. We're going to get into a little bit of background about the life cycle of stars and planets, places that we could look for life beyond Earth, and then sort of wrap up with what does it all mean. And I am obligated to say that I am speaking to you in a personal capacity, not on behalf of NASA, and I am not a federal employee. I'm a contractor. I'm sure all of the lawyers who are here appreciate that. Okay, so what is a science storyteller? So I think of my job as a translator. I am talking to scientists and engineers about data that look like what you see on the top here. And from this plot, which doesn't mean anything to most people in the world, we come up with some way to translate it into something that people can understand. And I will come back to this later in my talk, but what you're seeing right now is the TRAPPIST-1 exoplanet system that Jeremy alluded to earlier, 7 Earth-sized planets about 41 light years away. And if you just saw what is on top, you would be like, maybe my printer is broken. But when you take this and you imagine what these worlds are like, suddenly they become real, even though we can't actually see them with our eyes. So in my job at NASA, as well as in my freelance writing, I'm really trying to find these stories that really resonate with people, that share the excitement of discoveries beyond our planet, on our planet, and making science accessible to the public, making it something that everybody can really share in. So some of the ways that I tell science stories are through writing and editing, through producing videos, and through podcasts. Harold also mentioned Pod, Paper, Scissors, which is about game theory. But at NASA, I produce a podcast called Gravity Assist, which I'm sure you would all enjoy. Each week we talk to somebody who is at NASA or uses NASA data, how they got to be where they are today, and what are the exciting things that they're doing in the area of space exploration. So I'm in a really unique position because I get to communicate things that have never been done before. When I was at CNN, I covered the landing of the Curiosity rover in 2012, which was really the first time that we had landed something this big on Mars. It required a very complicated set of technologies and maneuvers that we call the 7 minutes of terror. This is actually also how we landed the Perseverance rover just in February of this year. And then most recently, not only did we land Perseverance, Perseverance had on board a helicopter. That helicopter is now the very first helicopter to make a powered flight on another planet. This happened in April. It has been making flights ever since. This is so exciting. And I'm so thrilled to be able to work with teams to communicate these kinds of things through social media, through website articles, podcasts, etc. But of course, the greatest discovery of all would be if it really were the aliens. And it is interesting that we don't use the A word at NASA. We never say alien. We very more precisely say the search for life beyond Earth, or extraterrestrial is a more technical term. And it's very interesting that I'm talking to you tonight because, as some of you may have seen in the news just today, actually the Pentagon has released a report about unidentified aerial phenomena, the first time that the government has released such a report. I've not actually read this report. However, from what I understand, it does not have aliens in it. But it is very interesting to think about the fact that there are things that cannot be explained and that we need more data about. The more data that we have, the more that we can explain things. And of course, if we have a lot of data, we still really need to interrogate it, and we have to be skeptical. We have to be extremely skeptical whenever there is a claim that there is extraterrestrial life, because it would be the greatest discovery of all. However, we can't be wrong about it. It would be terrible if we said that we found it and then, in fact, we did not. Actually, that did happen in the 90s with a Martian meteorite that was said to have microbes in it, fossils inside of it. Actually, it was said to be life from Mars, and then it was later disproven. So we definitely don't want to have anything like that happen again. It's better to interrogate, study, make more technologies, until you are absolutely certain that it is from beyond. And what I'm showing right here is actually something called a Oumuamua. It's a comet that came from another star system. And this has been in the news recently as well, because there is a Harvard scientist who believes that this, in fact, is a powered spaceship from another star system. However, the majority of scientists do not think there is enough evidence to claim that, and that indeed it is a comet. So again, my message is there could be life out there, but we really, really have to be skeptical. And I hope to give you some tools in this talk to think about the context in which life could evolve elsewhere. And from a communicator's perspective, I want to tell you that we should be thinking now about how to communicate the idea of life beyond Earth, because we are living in truly a golden age in which there's so many powerful telescopes, both on the ground and in space, that have the capability of looking in ways that we never had before. We also have robotic spacecraft going to Mars, going to some other planetary bodies that have more capabilities than we ever have before. So while we have not found life from outside of Earth yet, it could be coming soon, certainly within our lifetimes, I hope. And because of data-driven skepticism, it may take a very long time for us to be able to really have proof. You could imagine that we could get another rock from Mars, especially because actually NASA is planning to bring samples back through its Mars Sample Return Program for the first time. And this would be really a breakthrough in terms of our ability to look inside Martian soil and ask this question, is there present or past life or evidence of it inside this soil? It could take decades to really answer that question, but it's worth the wait. And it's okay to not jump to conclusions. So do we know where and how to look for habitable worlds? This is the James Webb Space Telescope. It's actually launching later this year. It will be the most complex telescope ever, and it will, in fact, be looking at exoplanets in brand new ways, looking at the atmospheres to see if they have the building blocks of life and if they could be habitable. But we need a wide variety of tools and very powerful instruments to be able to really understand what's out there and what we are seeing. So to think about life elsewhere, the possibility of it, we need to understand the life cycle of planetary systems. And I'm going to show you some little videos that I worked on when I was at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And this is sort of the beginning of this journey of a planetary system. You might recognize this image. This is called the Pillars of Creation. It's actually an image from the Hubble Space Telescope. And what we're seeing are the clouds of gas and dust where stars are being born. And you can see that this process can take about 100,000 years. It's a very complicated and mysterious thing. It could be that actually there's a nearby exploding star, a supernova, that emits a shock wave. The shock wave hits the cloud and makes it collapse into a star. And this is another example of a stellar nursery where all of the little blue dots are basically baby stars. So the next step is sort of having this baby star get bigger, get brighter, and this disk around it is starting to heat up. This disk around it is actually where the planets are going to form. And you'll see this is a very hot, chaotic situation here. Jets are coming out of the star itself. The disk is being irradiated. And if we were to see a star at this stage of its life, it's very unlikely that we would be able to find habitable planets. So the childhood of a star like our sun, you have planets like this. They're very hot. They're still forming because there's so much material still from that disk. And that material is just bombarding other material. Each of the forming planets are basically just being hit by forming asteroids, forming planets. It's just this very chaotic situation. And again, this is not good for life. Even though this is how our solar system began, this is an era in which it's unlikely that life could be thriving. This is actually a real image from the European Southern Observatory of a very young star with planets around it. It's a really interesting and unique image, again, showing how chaotic this period really is. So when a solar system is sort of in its teenage years, you have planets in kind of an unstable orbital situation. You still have some debris around, but very importantly, in our own solar system, in this period between 10 million and a billion years, you have Jupiter, which is gigantic, just moving around in weird ways, as well as Saturn. They really changed the order of the planets, and they may have even kicked material into the sun. They might have even kicked a whole planet into the sun. When you think about the way that other solar systems are configured that we have found with space telescopes, in fact, there are so many solar systems out there where there are planets that orbit their stars in only a few days or even a day, whereas Mercury is way out, right, at like 88 days. So it could be that there was at least one planet between the sun and Mercury, and when Jupiter was moving around, it actually kicked it inside. It could have also kicked stuff out of the solar system entirely. That's how we got something like Oumuamua, that comet that I showed you before. It seems to have been gravitationally kicked out of its home solar system. And we also have areas of our solar system, such as the asteroid belt and the Kuiper belt, that are full of small objects that never came together to be planets. Basically, it was Jupiter's fault, right? Jupiter didn't let all of these objects come together. It actually kept slamming into each other, and they are just now these sort of debris belts. Pluto is actually out in the Kuiper belt, is one of many small icy bodies. And let's go to the next one. So right now, our solar system is actually middle age. Our sun is 4.6 billion years old, and our planets of our solar system are in these very stable orbits, right? We're not in danger of being kicked into the sun right now. You can see the variety of planets that we have, and it is really worth taking a moment to appreciate that even though all of these planets came from the same cloud, the same disk then around the star that we call our sun, they are so different from one another, right? Saturn is the only one with a lot of very visible rings, although some of the other ones have smaller rings. And again, Jupiter and Saturn are so much bigger than the other planets. Uranus and Neptune, although they're both these gas balls, look very different from one another. And of course, we have Earth and Mars, while in some sense similar, the outcome right now is very different. So it's very interesting to think about, especially as we think about looking for other planets that might be habitable like ours. So what's going to happen next to our solar system when our sun is kind of a senior citizen, when it's about 10 billion to 11 billion years old? It's going to be really puffy, right? This is called the red giant phase. It's going to puff up so much, it's actually going to swallow Mercury, Venus, and probably the Earth as well. Again, this is not for another 6 billion years, so don't panic, but it is quite likely that, in fact, Earth will not survive the red giant phase of the sun. And some people have even thought about this in, a science fiction way or not, that, if humanity were to survive to that point, like, we really would have to live on another planet. We really would have to live on Mars or a moon of another planet or something if humanity would survive this red giant phase. And then at the end of the life of the sun, it's actually going to become a white dwarf. That means it's going to cast off its outer layers, and it will be much smaller than it is right now. Because it will have cast off so many layers, so much of its mass, it won't be as gravitationally attractive, and the planets that are surviving will actually be moving out. The alternative scenario is what you see here. This is what you probably think of as the end of the life of a star, a supernova. In fact, our sun is not massive enough to go supernova. So we're not in danger of a supernova. You would have to have a star that's much, much more massive than the sun for that to happen. So having said all of that, how lucky are we to be alive right now, right? That we are at this moment in the 4.6 billion year history of our planet, of our sun. If we were here earlier, our planet would not have been very habitable. If we were here later, much, much later, it would not be a pretty place to be either. So it's very interesting to think about, this real sweet spot that humanity has developed in when we think about the life cycle of stars and planets. And we're also at a very specific distance from our sun, right? Obviously, Mercury is too close to the sun to have developed life. It's just too hot. But again, Earth is in this very sweet spot. And so when astronomers are thinking about planets around other stars, the exoplanets, where life could potentially develop, they think about what kinds of conditions would we need. Well, we only have our Earth as a model for that. So we think about like, what is the average temperature of Earth? How much solar radiation do we receive? What is the density of Earth? These kinds of factors. And then we see if we could find those kinds of things out around another star. And Earth, again, I want to really impart, is a laboratory for thinking about life beyond Earth. When I see headlines like this, strange Antarctic bacteria that live off of air alone, like, oh my God, right? If we have bacteria that don't even need to eat anything except for our air, maybe they could survive in an extreme environment like Venus, right? Again, we have not found life on Venus, although there are some very exciting missions to Venus that are coming up in the coming decades, both from NASA and from the European Space Agency. But these are very tantalizing clues to the fact that life as we know it can really survive under very dire circumstances. So if we were to look for life in our solar system, let's talk about some of the places that are the most likely candidates. So Mars, while it seems like we're always sending things to Mars, like we really have only scratched the surface, literally. We have many spacecraft that have orbited Mars and taken beautiful images like this, but you really need to get up close and personal. And when we do get up close and personal, we're seeing some very interesting things. For example, these spikes in methane, right? Methane is a gas that is associated with life, although it's not determinative of life. However, scientists still cannot quite explain why during some periods, Mars seems to have these spikes in methane. Also, we seem to find water all the time, like these rocks that have clearly been shaped by water. We know that Mars had a global ocean billions of years ago and an atmosphere. Mars was once a blue planet, just like the Earth. This is what has been learned from sending so many robotic spacecraft there. We also know there is probably water beneath the surface of Mars. And we have seen these very interesting briny features called reoccurring slope lineae. These are, for some reason, seasonal liquid flows. These are still subjects of investigation. And again, we do not know, if there's anything inside of them, but they are tantalizing clues for things that we could investigate later. Something that is a little bit less well known is Europa. Europa is a moon of Jupiter. It is icy. It has these cracks on it. It is being pummeled by radiation from Jupiter, and the gravity of Jupiter is making it flex all the time. If you were standing on the surface of Europa, a scientist once told me, you would actually rise and fall over the course of a day, which is just like mind-blowing, right? So that's why you see all these fractures. But what we have learned from spacecraft data is that there is apparently an ocean underneath the ice shell of Europa. And we know from Earth that we are looking for water as a proxy for where life might be, even though we have also seen from some of these like bacteria that sometimes life doesn't even need water. But this is why Europa, because of its under ice ocean, is a very interesting target to look for possible signatures of life. And NASA is sending a mission there called the Europa Clipper mission in the mid-2020s to do some orbits, some very close flybys of Europa. and really take some really amazing images and data to try to get closer to the answer of if Europa might have life. Another moon that is of Saturn this time that's very interesting for the search for life is Enceladus. Enceladus is actually smaller than Earth's moon. It's this very small ice ball, and it might not look like much, but when the Cassini spacecraft got close, it took this incredible image and many others showing water spewing out into space, this plume that again tells us there must be water underneath the ice shell. There is not currently a mission planned to Enceladus, but this is another very interesting planetary body that we should be thinking about when we could think about where there might be life outside of Earth. And I will also talk a little bit about Titan. Titan, again, just at first glance, doesn't look like much, although this image from Cassini is really amazing. What you're seeing, the horizontal lines are actually the rings of Saturn, and the small gray ball is Dione, which is another moon of Saturn. But Titan itself is this, ball of haze. And when we look very close, actually we see that Titan is full of lakes, which is very surprising. Lakes that are not made of water, but are made of liquid hydrocarbons like methane and ethane, pardon me. And this is actually the only example of a planetary body beyond Earth where a liquid flows on the surface. And while it's not water, astrobiologists are very interested in the question of if there could be a form of life that uses liquid hydrocarbon the way that Earth-based life uses water. This is still an open question, but a very interesting avenue of inquiry. And there are many scientists looking into it. We're also very excited about NASA's Dragonfly mission to Titan, which is a octocopter. It's sort of like a souped up little helicopter that's gonna hop around on Titan and really take some amazing images and data. So very excited about that as well. So there are a lot of different kinds of planets and stars when we get outside of our solar system. I'm actually wearing this image that's on the screen here. I like to wear my space dress when I give talks, but I love this image because it really does evoke that stars and planets come in many sizes, and we have also found so many of them and in such a great proportion that we know from the Kepler spacecraft that there are more planets than stars in our galaxy. We already knew that there were billions and billions of stars, and there are twice as many planets. So just an unimaginable number of planets yet to be discovered, but also to be seen up close. And we have confirmed through telescopes more than 4,400 as of today. So I want to return to TRAPPIST-1, which is one of the most exciting things that I've worked on as a NASA press officer. This is basically data showing the dip in starlight when these planets pass by their star. Their star is less than 10% the size of the sun, so it's very small and very faint. And all of these 7 Earth-sized planets would fit inside the orbit of Mercury. So they're really huddled close to their star. But because their star is so small, actually 3 or 4 of them, depending on who you ask, are in the habitable zone. They are, in fact, receiving enough starlight to potentially have liquid water on their surface given the right conditions. So a scientist and his colleagues contacted me when they were submitting their paper about this to the journal Nature in the fall of 2016. And they knew it was going to be a really big result. And since I was the press officer for the Spitzer Space Telescope, I had the really unique opportunity to help shape this story. And I actually sat next to two of our visualization specialists who were able to talk to the scientists and think about what this really means, this data plot, given what we know about these planets, which is in fact very little, what might they look like? And so they came up with this vision of the 7 planets, which again, kind of like our solar system, each one of them is unique, even though they all came originally from the same cloud of gas and dust. And you can see that some of them have liquid water on their surface. Again, that is just an artist concept. We do not know if there is really water there, but they are in the right orbital position to be able to possibly have liquid water there. This really captured the imagination of a lot of people. This was actually on the cover of the New York Times when it came out. It was really an amazing day when we had the press conference, and it was just a Google Doodle. It was like really everywhere. And I remember that when I looked at the other news items that day, it was really a very negative time. It was really a very negative day, like really like 2017, while there was no pandemic, like there were a lot of things, regarding the US government, regarding climate change, forest fires, like it was a mess in 2017. But this was such a beautiful story, the idea that there could be 7 Earth-sized planets that we could discover. It was really amazing. And it really speaks to the idea that space stories largely are very positive stories, and they make people happy and they give people hope, even when we are in a very dark time. I want to show this artist concept as well. Again, my colleague Tim Pyle did this, but it looks so real. Like, this is how he imagines TRAPPIST-1F, where while it is icy, there is a little bit of liquid water as well. And it also speaks to the power of seeing a place from the ground. Most of the images that we have of planets beyond Earth are from space because we have never landed there, with the exception of Mars, with the exception of our moon, of course. But when we land, when we are able to have the vision of standing on the surface, it really changes the game. It becomes a real place. And I think that's why this image was also everywhere. It's aesthetically pleasing, but it also really says, like, wow, like, this is a real place. Like, wouldn't it be amazing to go here someday? So these are not real extraterrestrials. These are a few images from science fiction. And I put them here because they do capture the imagination. They are human visions of what extraterrestrials could be. And it's especially interesting to think about technologies that could exist beyond Earth. Because while our greatest technology perhaps is our phone, as E.T. has here, although that's not actually an image from the movie, I thought it was very fun. You think about the Cylon here, or the spaceship from Arrival, and in some sense it makes sense that if there were a civilization that were that distant and that were able to travel this far for this long, they would need some kind of extraordinary machinery. And in fact, they might send robots instead, right? I just think that that's a really interesting idea. And there are plenty of examples where there's been as Carl Sagan said, an interesting dance between science and science fiction. But the larger point is, like, since we have seen that the life cycle of a planetary system is so long, and the period of time in which a planet might be primed for life is relatively short in that span, we have to ask ourselves, why would they come now if they came? And I want to talk a little bit about this as well. I actually had my very first New York Times science story this week as a freelancer. I wrote actually about something that's not extraterrestrial at all, but made me think about something else related to this. So I wrote about this technology in which researchers were able to genetically engineer bacteria to actually glow, as in this image, in the presence of the chemical associated with landmines, with TNT. And it's an amazing achievement of engineering, but it made me think as well, like this is sort of the pinnacle of our current technology. We can take life and we can make it the machine that we need, right? We already have the ability to merge what is living with a machine to become a sensor of sorts. So if we can do that today, think about what an advanced civilization would be able to do in terms of merging what is living in what we think of as living with their advanced machinery. And we have seen, of course, many examples in science fiction where people can travel very far, very fast. We even see sort of a precursor to the iPad in this very old Star Trek image. It just makes me think about how, you know, it is worth using our imaginations to not only, you know, think about what is possible in the future, but also, you know, dream about like knowing what we know today, like what do we want to know in the future? Where would we want to go in the future? And, you know, when I talk to scientists about their careers and their inspirations, like a lot of them really do cite examples from science fiction that, you know, made them want to become scientists and engineers. And, you know, I don't think we should discount that. Like, while today the only extraterrestrials that we know are in fiction, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't. That doesn't mean that we should stop dreaming and that we should stop creating these technologies to look, as well as it doesn't mean that we should stop, you know, doing these beautiful television shows and movies and things like that. I think there's a lot to be gained from the intersection between, you know, science and fiction. So I want to pose a couple of big questions to you that, you know, we're not going to answer tonight, but that you should think about for yourself. Like, what would it mean to you to learn that there are bacteria on another planet? And this is probably going to be a really relevant question sometime in the future. It's not going to be tomorrow, but someday, many scientists do think that there could be bacteria, perhaps on Mars, perhaps elsewhere in our solar system, or beyond in the exoplanets. If we knew that, would that change your life in any way? And how is that different from knowing that there might be intelligent creatures on another planet? Does that put your life in a different context? And I think these are really interesting philosophical questions. I recently read a book called The Three-Body Problem. It's a novel that came out in the last 10 years, and I won't spoil it, but basically the notion that there is going to be an invading alien species in 400 years from when the characters are alive really puts their lives into disarray. People don't think it means anything to be alive anymore, knowing that there's going to be alien invaders who might possibly destroy the Earth. It was a very interesting meditation on like what it means, you know, to be human, and, you know, putting our humanity in context of a possible extraterrestrial civilization. Again, we have never had evidence that this is true. We have no evidence that there are extraterrestrials. However, it's interesting to think about philosophically. And I kind of want to end on this. This is the Voyager spacecraft. There are actually two of them. They have been traveling for more than 40 years. They actually launched in 1977. Super impressive. there are very few computers that people still use that are 43 years old, but the Voyagers still send back data every single day. And they are actually carrying with them the Golden Record. Each one has a copy of Golden Record. This is something that Carl Sagan and his team came up with, where it's a record that contains the sights and sounds of Earth. And he and his team basically compiled, all of these different greetings in different languages, different songs, images of different kinds of life on Earth and people, and they put it all together on a record. The cover actually contains instructions for playing the record, although who knows? I don't know. I would be able to figure this out if I just caught it, right? But the idea is that we are sending out this message into the cosmos that we are here, and because it probably won't be found in our lifetimes, or might never be found, it's in a way just saying we were here. The Voyagers are likely to be traveling for thousands and thousands of years. They literally may outlast humanity itself. And that's also amazing to think about, that the sort of the last remnant of the human species is possibly this golden record on these spacecraft. So while it's not an active signal, we're not broadcasting like, hey, come find us, we are also in a way sending out this symbol of peace, this symbol of, we just wanted you to know that we were here. So I'm happy to take questions, and here's some contact info, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Liz. I'm monitoring the YouTube for questions. Anyone in the Zoom link, in the Zoom meeting, have any questions for Liz?
Oh, I'm muted. Hi, I'm Louis Berman. I wanted to ask, how did you even get this fabulous, fun career? I mean, it was, it sounded like, I don't know where I'd go to the catalog for it, right?
Oh, I really appreciate you asking that. So I've always wanted to be a writer. And when I was an undergraduate at Princeton, I took this amazing class. It was actually called Life on Mars, or Maybe Not. It was taught by Mike Lemonick, who is an acclaimed science writer, and Ed Turner, who is an astrophysicist. And it was a freshman seminar all about sort of how science is portrayed in the media. And before that class, I really didn't know that the job of a science writer or communicator or anything even existed. But that class really convinced me wow, this is amazing. This is what I want to do. And it really appealed to me because I've always been interested in science. Even from childhood, I loved astronomy, everything. But I also didn't really want a research career. And so I really pursued this other kind of path where I was doing a lot of journalism. I got a master's in journalism. I became a writer at CNN.com in Atlanta in 2007. And yeah, I just really continued forging this path. And I've just been really lucky. I've had amazing mentors. And this job opened up at NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory in 2014. It was a huge change for me. I moved from Atlanta to Los Angeles, but it ended up being great. And then most recently, I've moved to Washington, D.C., where I continue to work for NASA, but at NASA headquarters.
Thank you.
Liz, you ask, your second question is, what would it mean to us, or what would we think if there were actually intelligent life out there? In all the science fiction movies I've ever seen, the government's response is, they're a threat, we must kill them. And, sort of the ET model. I think that's fiction's take. And I know you're not officially speaking for NASA. What's NASA's real take on what if there's intelligent life out there? What's their attitude about it?
I can't really speak for them. And, I think it's not really something that is spoken about that much, to be honest with you. Like, we also, think about what's called techno-signatures, which is like, could we detect, so if the extraterrestrials would be watching television, like, could we detect some kind of radio signal?
Or pollution.
Or
pollution.
Sorry, pollution. Actually, there was some really interesting research out of NASA last year, actually, that pollution would be a really great indicator of a planet that is inhabited. So yeah, like, these are some of the things that I've heard about and read about. Yeah. But no one is saying we got to go get them. So, yeah.
We're very quiet for some reason today.
I think one idea that that's kind of swirling around in my head now is we've always sort of had this idea in our mind that if extraterrestrial life were discovered, it would be like a sudden thing. It's like one morning you'd wake up and there's a headline on CNN, aliens discovered. Whereas, the reality is more like it's going to be a years-long process where it's like, oh, well, there's some new data and it looks interesting and we're ruling out other possibilities and kind of gradually working your way there. I mean, do you think that would affect how the response is? It's not going to be this sudden shock. It's going to be like, probably by the time it's announced, it's like everybody kind of knows that that's what's going to be announced.
Absolutely. That's such an interesting point. And, it makes me think back to kind of how water on Mars has been covered and announced. Like, we've found evidence of water on Mars like so many times, but it, keeps coming up as, headlines in the media and everything. And it's because, these different rovers and landers, like, they find different lines of evidence that water was there. And, like, I keep coming back to the idea of, like, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Like, scientists have to be the ultimate skeptics. They're there to interrogate what is found with the sharpest tools that they have, and they are going to try to keep inventing more tools to make absolutely certain that this is what it is. So absolutely, I anticipate that if there were something that were found, it would be something that would just keep coming up again and again and again, until the scientists would be really, really sure that that's what it is. Unless it like said hello or something. Again, it's most likely to be bacteria. And actually this brings up another interesting point. If we were to find bacteria on a sample from Mars, we have to be absolutely certain that it wasn't from Earth, right? That it didn't come from the lab in which it was being studied, and that it didn't come from a spacecraft that brought it back, right? That bacteria from Earth didn't hitch a ride. And this whole area is actually called planetary protection. We have a planetary protection officer at NASA and a very rigorous program to make sure our spacecraft are very clean so that we don't actually contaminate other worlds. But it would definitely be an argument that we have to know that if we were to find extraterrestrial bacteria, that it was not actually Earth bacteria.
I remember when they were recruiting the planetary protection officer, because even that made the news.
Oh, yeah.
That's got to be the coolest job title ever.
I was going to apply, but I didn't think I qualified.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah. Well, it's a cool job title as long as you don't have to make good on it, right?
Right. But
very scary.
there's been some comments about the tardigrades that sort of hitched a ride where on the shuttle, and they were fine on the outside, and not the shuttle, the space station. Tardigrades on the outside of the space station, and they were fine.
Yeah, tardigrades are incredible, and like I love tardigrades. I can't get enough of them. But yeah, like there's so many different experiments going on right now, including tardigrades have gone to space on space station to see like under what conditions can they actually live, and yeah, it seems like they can really survive a lot for sure.
If we could just dehydrate ourselves and launch ourselves into space, and then rehydrate in several hundred years, we could expand how far we could travel.
Exactly. And yeah, it's like the closest star, the closest planet around another star is over 4 light years away. So even at light speed, nothing can get there in less than 4 years. So we definitely need faster technologies to be able to do anything meaningful.
Yeah.
Hey, can I ask another question? You know, you're a professional science communicator, right? But in no small sense, a lot of the people in this club are, if you will, amateur science communicators, trying to talk to you know, the public about astronomy and physics and other things. Do you have any advice for us in our amateur communicator role?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. I mean, I know that in some sense, astronomy can be a little bit esoteric, but there's also something beautiful about the fact that you can just be like, no, really, like look up, right? Like I've been in situations where like a lunar eclipse is happening in that moment and a person is walking their dog. And I was like, hey, did you look up and see the eclipse? And they were like, oh, like they literally were not looking up at the moon at that moment, right? So I think, you know, emphasizing, you know, the kinds of things that you can see with the naked eye, because I know it's like sort of another barrier to entry to get like a telescope, or I guess binoculars would be kind of an intermediary before you get like a telescope or something. But just like in general, you know, people really resonate with human stories. And, you know, I think the more that you can talk about what it means to you to be able to see Saturn, or to, you know, do some of these interesting observing programs that were spoken about earlier, you know, people resonate with other people. And it's a really great tool to be able to share personal experiences. And, you know, imagery, like, some of the beautiful astrophotography that's done, I think really resonates with people also. And then I guess just like kind of super basic, like, you know, to not use jargon when talking to people who don't know a lot about a subject, you know, to sort of assess like where they are in their understanding. And if their understanding is like super, super basic, to not like throw things at them that they've never heard of before without like explaining it to them in a really like friendly way. And yeah, just like kind of meeting people where they are, I guess, is my best advice.
Cool. Thank you.
I find when parsecs come up in a conversation, I turn them people right off. I cannot figure out what a parsec is.
Oh, it's just like a certain number of light years, right?
Right.
3.63, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It's sort of like scientific notation.
3.26, right?
Yeah.
I think it was like
Oh, I inverted it.
I knew this crew would know. But we have quite a number of amazing photographers among our membership. Sometimes they take over the entire meeting, but and talk astrophotography. But there's been some amazing shots. Actually, the one behind me is from our observing chair. He just took it a couple weeks ago.
Oh,
during the new moon, and then posted it, and now it's my background.
that's very cool. And you guys all know about astronomy picture of the day, APOD?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so popular. It's amazing.
He actually, he's from here. He's from this area.
Oh, really?
The founder of that. And he came back and spoke, I would have to say 4 or 5 years ago or more, to the Rittenhouse Astronomical Society at the Franklin Institute. Robert Nemiroff.
Yeah,
Nemiroff. Yeah. It was very interesting. I actually, that's how I sort of got back into astronomy. He was teaching early on after the iPod was invented in 2004, 2005. Apple started on online courses, Apple University, and you could take classes. And he taught an introduction to astronomy that I watched on my iPod, and it was all from the astronomy picture, the photo of the day. Amazing
That's
stuff.
cool. Wow.
Yeah. I'm not seeing any questions on YouTube. Any questions here in our chat? I don't see our chat. No, we're good. Well, Liz, it's been wonderful to see you
It's great.
at last, after hearing about you all this time from Justin. I was fascinated by what you showed us, and I'm still thinking. I think the rest of my weekend I'm going to be contemplating what happens when we find out that I don't have any problems. If they say there's bacteria elsewhere, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest bit. But I also don't think it would be intimidating, like if they found proof of intelligent life elsewhere. That might. I guess the only thing for me it would do is it would throw a real monkey wrench into certain fundamentalist faiths.
Yeah. Well, read The Three Body Problem.
I
It'll
think
change your mind. That was a great book, by the way.
I'm going to add that to my list. I will definitely add that to my list. Thank you for that.
You can be a wall facer, which will make no meaning to you unless you read the book.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for joining us. I appreciate it. You're welcome to stay aboard. The meeting people are going to suddenly reappear, and we end up sort of hanging out. In the old days, when we actually met live, we would all end up going to Manila's Mainline Diner further out on Lancaster Avenue, near your old stomping grounds. We actually used to go to Galifte's, but when the wait staff stopped, I don't know what happened, but they stopped paying attention to us. Maybe we turned into dark matter to them. I'm not sure. But they were not interacting with us. That much is for sure. So we moved further west to Manila's, and that's where we've been hanging out. And hopefully we'll return in September.
Very nice.
Is there anything else from anybody who wants to report for the good of the order? Anybody I missed with reports or anything like that? I thought Lou was going to say something. He almost materialized. But you have anything about photography, Lou? Unmute yourself if you do.
Yeah, hold on. I got company over here. I want to make sure they're not. Are we still being recorded?
Yes. So keep it clean, Lou.
Not me. You guys keep it clean.
Rated G. Sure.
Actually, I was looking for somebody to help with the astrophotography component of our club. Right now, my health is not really giving me enough time to do what I need to do. So if anybody's interested in helping me out, there's a lot of talented people that we have in our club. It doesn't have to be just one person, but I need content and I don't have time to put anything out. So if somebody can, reach out to me if you're interested. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, so I'm not going to say any names, but you know who you are. Get a hold of me. I would appreciate the help.
Lou, email Dick Steinberg too.
Sure. I mean, he's not here.
Yeah, he was on, but he's not now.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll send a message out to the Groups IO.
Yeah, and if you want, you can send it to Groups IO, but if you want it to go out officially from the club, let me know or send something to me and I'll send it out through through Club Express.
Yeah.
Through our host site.
I've had the last 2 months have been a nightmare for me. I spent 27 out of the last 55 days in the hospital, and my problem's still not resolved.
Probably don't want to wear a Phillies hat.
No, well, fortunately today I'm feeling good, but that's because the medicine helps, but it doesn't last very long. So
yeah, all right. I'm
gonna need help. So we have a lot of talented people out there. Please don't hesitate to help. That way you can help yourselves too.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, folks, you can rematerialize. Everybody's video's off. Liz, I don't know. Maybe they just here we go. Here comes
They're
everybody.
here. We're not hiding.
There we go.
We're very conscious